Okay, thank you again for reminding me to do that. So we have that recording done. All right, guys, thank you, everyone. Welcome to our breakout room. This is enabling on-chain voting. This is sponsored by DripDropz. We're here today because we're going to have an open forum discussion on what it means to vote on-chain, and we're going to start out by talking about the fact that DripDropz has, we successfully completed an on-chain vote using a native asset, the DRIP token, recently in just the last couple of months. And so in that process, we built out a tool. The tool worked and it was successful. And now our goal is to actually take that tool and provide that tool to the community in an open source package. And so there is a Catalyst proposal in Fund 9 that seeks to do exactly that. And to get started with that, some of the people might say, well, what does it really take to open source, a tool? And the answer is quite a bit. If a tool is built in a private tool set, you've got to go through the tool set and make sure that that everything that backs up the tool is going to able to be open sourced, or if you have to replace it with something that is open source, you got to document it properly. And then most importantly, you have to support it for a period of time after you release it, unless you're just dumping it in the wild. So the way we chose to do this was, we chose to do it the right way, encapsulate the tool that we built and that was successful, make it into an open source system that you guys can all download and use. So, and that's the basic introduction to the thing. I was like, Kyle, would you like to add anything? Get started here.
Yeah, my internet's going in and out, so I missed a whole lot of that. So I'm not sure what missed, what may have been missed or not. But usually you're pretty thorough. But I think from a high level, we just kind of want to discuss challenges and the best way to kind of do things moving forward.
Right on. And so the basic idea here is, what did it take to do on-chain voting? There was a sort of an introductory tool. It was actually built quite a while back for Spacra by Adam Dean, and Adam's on our team here at DripDropz, and some of the technology that was there was brought forward, and then there's been some further improvements that were made from that that got us to the point where we had a system that was auditable, a system that you can do repeat, right? You can actually rerun through all the records and see that all the records came through correctly, and that was entirely on-chain and immutable. He did this with a fungible token that allowed the system to actually track everything. And we've asked Adam if he can join us today, and if he can, we'll bring him in and have him talk as well, more into the details of the technology side of things. So one of the things that we're looking at is we're going to be doing this sort of long term. The idea that DripDropz is a governance token, so we needed the ability to be able to go to our community and say, hey, here are the questions that we need to answer. And and the community took a look at the questions, they gave us feedback on the questions first. So that's another part of the process. Like, we started out with, hey, what are the questions that we need answers, and what are the answers that would be acceptable to be able to work from as a team? And so we adjusted that. We sent that for feedback to the community, got that feedback, and then we built our ballot. So it's a multi-step process. So does anybody have any questions in here right now as we're getting started? Anybody have any other experiences with on-chain voting that you'd like to talk about?
Is there any plan for privacy features?
So that's an interesting, conundrum, right? Basically on blockchain, your privacy is, if your wallet can't be traced, if your wallet doesn't connect to anything else, but if you can see the person's wallet, well, needfully, it's that particular answer is traceable back to whomever it is that made the, that did the voting, because that's just the way it is. Now go ahead.
You can use zero-knowledge cryptography to hide the identity.
Right.
The potential exists for that. Now, that wasn't in this version of the voting that we did build, but the potential does exist for zero knowledge. In this version, it was more like if you think about a board meeting, right, where or like a school board meeting, anything like that, where effectively the votes are public knowledge, because it is what it is. So that's what this level of the voting was like. I see Tivo's guy's hand up. Tivo, go ahead.
So I assume like majority voting was used, but is there any like other models that we could like play around, like different, we have these questions, we answer them, but we have like different ways to answer them, like rank them or compare or group them?
Yeah, you know, like, so part of what we're building out, you know, we as far as feature sets go, yeah, well, you can probably answer exact ones, but you know, this isn't just for DripDropz. We're on a lot of different projects, and a lot of those projects need governance models in various forms. And so this is going to enable various facets of snapshotting. So you can snapshot on different requirements. So you could do, you know, stake-based voting, right? How much of the asset do you hold? Or you could do, if anybody holds any of the asset, things like that. You could get creative and if anybody holds any of these policy IDs, right? So it's all about enabling flexibility. You know, that's really kind of the point of providing use.
Am I allowed to interject there to just continue? Like, is this configuration ability on the tool itself, or is it like more a backend that you have to know how to kind of inject the code into to make these feature sets and like, or accepting these tokens, or you basically open up like a no code version? Yeah, I need this policy, this policy.
It's a question for Adam. So I'd have to look and see specifically what we would do. But if it's, I mean, is it a question, is an issue? It's not an issue. What you're asking is relatively straightforward in the way that we would implement. So, I mean, I think that if, assuming that the project would get funded, we would enable various mechanisms. I can't commit to which ones, because when you open up more control level, it's you kind of open up more room for security, because you're kind of creating like dynamic queries and things like that. So, I mean, that's not really a question for me to answer. That's really like an architectural question for Adam. But based on what I know of Adam and how fast he is, I wouldn't see that as an issue.
Right. And I know when we've had the previous discussions, a lot of what I've heard in those previous discussions has been things like ranked choice voting as a possibility, as well as, you know, the idea of you know, just simple majority, or you can have you can set a quorum type majority where you have to be over 60% or 40% or whatever the number is to make it, you know, a valid vote. So all of that is really calculation stuff that just has to be, you know, attributed. And then, as Kyle was saying, when it comes to who gets to vote, it is going to rely on snapshotting. Voting will always rely on snapshotting, as far as we can tell at this point. So because you have to have a snapshot, you will have to have some technology to create the snapshot, whatever that looks like. And from what we were talking about, it could be as simple as just having a list of wallets and giving a list of wallets a set amount of power. You have that option as well. That's the simplest way of doing it. Sort of like we use the example of the soccer club wanting to have a vote, and just want to make sure that every team member of the soccer club got to have one vote. Well, you would literally just have to give each soccer club member one wallet with one voting power, load that spreadsheet into the snapshot, and the tool would work. So it is really powerful, you know, so it can be very simplistic, but it can also, you can imagine that if you can go from that level, that you could then get as creative as you want with your snapshotting to make whatever decision you want. Part of that Adam also built into it is that we have a means to record the ballot questions on chain. So that way you made the ballot questions themselves immutable, which I also think is a cool and important part of it. You wouldn't want anybody to be able to later come back and say, oh, well, the question was this, and you answered yes to it. Well, no, I answered no or I answered yes to some other question entirely. Well, with the vote, with the ballot being on chain, you can't change the question after either. So it works out really well for that. So again, just tools that are built in. Logan, you have a question?
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm part of the project or the team building Clarity Protocol. And I wanted to ask, is your guys' governance solutions leveraging Agora, the open source governance module that Liquid and MLabs are building out? And also just wanted to say, I think it's very important, these tools, because, if you're going to operate as a decentralized application, you should also operate as a decentralized organization. And that just brings about, all these different governance tools that will need to be built so these companies can operate as they'd like to and have their own custom rules. So we're happy to collaborate, whether it's talking through bug fixes or, bouncing ideas off each other. I think that can be a big part, especially if we can standardize, what types of governance that Cardano projects can easily have access to, right, and not do double work eventually.
Exactly, and that's great. And we are not using any other protocols. This was stuff that was actually based around the Spacra tool that was originally created a while back. So I don't know if there's any cross chain, cross pollination through there. So there might be some similarities because of that. But no, this tool was developed independently. Collaboration sounds great, and I would we'd definitely welcome talking with you guys and and seeing where things fit in, where there might be some things that some synergies that could fit in. That's excellent. And I'm sorry, I see something coming in chat here as well. Let's see, we have let's see something from Quasar here. I'm not quite sure what it was. The next version of the Catalyst Circle. And yes, I mean, that's definitely one of the things that sort of that I could see is a useful way of using this tool. Is a lot of people ask the question, well, what is Catalyst Circle doing? Well, if we had some voting mechanism where people were being engaged and were voting on issues on a regular basis that were raised by a Catalyst Circle type of organization, there might be some use there. That's the kind of things that we're hoping to empower people by having these tools and making them available to everybody. In addition to that, this is the kind of thing where, like, what Logan was saying, where if we have the opportunity to collaborate and build decentralized organizations, not everybody's decentralized organization is going to be the same, right? Not everybody's decentralized organization is going to need the same tools. It won't be a one size fits all thing. So, that's what we're hoping is that we're building something that's extensible to others, that they can take and make their own and do the things that make sense. Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
I was clapping, wasn't raising it.
Okay, thanks. All right, Tivo, you had another question. You go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a little experience trying to bring governance tools to this community and in other businesses. But the biggest downside was that at first we focused on more business relationships. And when you come with this tool set to communities, they don't need create their own front end and then
exactly.
Establish an admin boards and that onboarding situation was very hard. So can you a bit elaborate how would in here in the group, could you just share a QR code, we take up an app, and can we start already voting, or there should also be some kind of how to say this QSC involved in getting into the process?
Sure. And I mean, I can tell you for the initial DripDropz vote that it was all web-based. There was a requirement that they held the drip token in advance. So there was some setup that had to be done on their part. They had to at least have a Cardano wallet, and they had to at least have drip tokens. The way we've talked about it, this could be as simple as providing something like a paper wallet that already has the token in it, and then they can use a QR code, and that would load their voting power right at that point. And it works that way if we want it to. So so that is absolutely an option with this. It's that, but that's the whole point of this tool being extensible, is that you will be able to take the tool and you're going to be able to use it to perform the functions that you need to do for governance the way your organization needs it. We didn't go beyond that. We don't need to go beyond that. And I understand where you're coming from, because I've done software development for years for large corporations. I did a lot of medical work over the years, lots of medical transcription. Everything we built was just thick with regulations and, extra stuff that, a small doctor's office didn't need. So we never could reach that audience at any point in time because we were just too over the top. Same thing here. This is a voting tool. It's a clean, basic voting infrastructure that people are going to be able to use to vote in their projects, in their DAOs, in their whatever. Maybe Catalyst will pick it up and can use it for figuring things out. Get quorums at events and figure things out at events. It'll be great for that. George, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, is this kind of going to be like a long-term ambition to kind of monetize this and keep this in-house? Obviously, you could open source the smart contracts, or it's really just like an open source project where it's just like pass it over, here's a smart contracts. We want to make them as flexible as possible and those to be audited well. And that, that's the kind of job, or is it more like a SaaS model where it's like, we'll help you run all your governance side?
Well, absolutely.
Or a bit of both, obviously.
Absolutely. And we're doing both. Yes, absolutely. And I know our team's just a firm believer in this, the model of open source, right? Setting the tool free and letting people use the tool for what they want to use it for, but then offering a professionally hosted service that utilizes the same tool. That's a tried and true business model. It absolutely works. And yeah, that's definitely never out of the cards for us. We already have the tool. We could do that now without open sourcing it. But our choice is to actually open source it, and then in addition, continue to run and offer the service to people that don't choose to run the infrastructure behind it or do the snapshots. And those are complicated technical tasks that not everybody's up for. So for those people, they will be able to still come to us and use the service.
Well, when you build a competitive product, you always have to keep moving.
Yeah. Keep moving forward. I know Kyle's poor internet just doesn't like him today. Sorry, Kyle. We'll move on to Lee. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. How does this compare to Voltaire?
So I've seen Voltaire recently. It came up. It actually went live a little after we had run our first vote. I haven't spent a lot of time in the Voltaire system. So what I do know, the little that I did look at it, it looked like it was a 1-for-1 setup of the Spacra tool that I was talking about earlier that came from Adam Dean, who's on our team, who built this newer, more advanced version of the same. We're sort of the next iteration of technology on from that is where we're at now.
I got cut off. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I know. We're Puerto Rico.
Lloyd picked up where you left off. Was there any questions that I could help with?
There was another hand raised. It just went down.
Can you drop the link to the proposal?
Yeah, sure, could do that. Yeah, give me just a second. I'll pull the proposal up and drop a link in the chat here. If anybody else has any questions or anything to continue adding on it while I'm digging this up, you guys go right ahead. I'll get right back in there.
And I think Lloyd touched on the main idea earlier, is the key is open source the technology so that people can use it. But we will also continue using the technology for people who don't want to go through the techie stuff, and we can support them with that as well.
Is the KYC proposal part of this voting proposal as well?
That's a separate technology with a separate purpose on DripDropz.
Same group though.
Yeah. Yeah. Same group, different product.
Yeah, that's a different product line altogether.
But I imagine, I hope they're interoperable. Hope you can use them for both. Or will you be submitting a separate proposal for new KYC for voting?
So no, I don't think. Yeah, I don't see where the case. So voting as a tool is going to be a tool. KYC, the thing that the proposal that we have that has KYC related to it is simply out of a matter of it. In order to talk to financial rails in the real world, the traditional finance world, you must have a whole process with AML and KYC, and it is what it is. If you want to legitimately work with traditional finance and then give them opportunities to on-ramp onto the chain, you must use the right tool. And so that proposal is related to that. What you're saying is decentralized identity, which that's something we definitely are working on, looking into, building on, and will that be something that we would introduce into the voting later? It's a possibility because it makes a lot of sense. Whether or not that needs a different proposal, that'll depend on just how much work it would be to integrate it into the voting app, or if it's even needed to be integrated, right?
Yeah, voting doesn't require KYC. The only thing that requires KYC are certain value amounts. And so for now, the KYC technologies are aligned towards the regulatory requirements.
Totally understand. As Catalyst, as it pertains to Catalyst, obviously, the pay to play for the proposers, even CAs, this is something that's come up quite a bit. Rick, I think it's something that you agree with. I do too at this point.
I would have to understand what you're talking about before I would say.
Making proposers put in like a 10 ADA or a 1 ADA or 2 ADA, 5 ADA. Whatever,
oh yeah,
something,
a deposit that you get back. Yes,
yep,
exactly. I agree with. Not pay to play, but a deposit that is returned. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, not trying to redirect this call.
But. Hey, Logan, we do things differently here, man. You can just talk, brother.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I prefer that as well. I was used to that. Yeah, on August 2nd, we actually have we're trying to start a DAO alliance in the Cardano ecosystem. So we have a meeting of people building DAO tool and governance tools, just to kind of get on the same page about what everyone's building, see if there's any synergies, see what we can accomplish faster together. So if you guys are interested, there's just like a Discord chat right now. I can add you guys to it.
Yeah, awesome. Why don't you? Yeah, if it's on Discord, I'm just it's Lloyd space Duhon hashtag 2044.
Perfect.
You just go ahead and send me that, and we'll start talking. I did share the it's 421908 is the idea number. I did share the link to the chat here. So if you guys want to take a look at the proposal itself that we're working from, that's the proposal there. And like I said, it is the idea behind it, to kind of wrap back into what it is. The idea behind the proposal is we've already created a successful voting platform. We've used it to complete a on-chain vote with a native asset. And now we're wanting to convert that into an open source package, a truly packaged open source tool that the community can then take, use, change, do whatever they want to do, and set it up, document it, and then manage it for a period of 1 year before, and then it'll be fully alive on the community on its own after the year. So that's the proposal. And obviously we would love you guys' support in the proposal. And if you've got any if there's anybody's got any other questions, like I said, feel free to chime in. Roki, go right ahead, just start talking. We're as long as we're honoring each other's time here, we'll be fine. We'll just keep moving through, let people ask questions.
Oh, what's up, guys? Just want to say a quick shout out to the DripDropz team. You guys have been doing great stuff since I entered or got around the Cardano family. And actually, I would say I'm a Cardano native. I'm the only blockchain I'm really familiar with. But I like what you guys do and what you bring. That's why I'm here. And I do have your proposal already sort of in my sights. I already had it up from yesterday, I think. I did have a question, kind of myself. I'm learning about a lot of things, and one of them is particularly with Cardano is around what you spoke to with accessibility, and basically I've learned about Marlowe, and I'm wondering if there's if there were any thoughts around implementing Marlowe so that you know, anybody can sort of apply their business logic layer without having to be a coder themselves. That's one question. And then another one is, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Unsigned Patrick. He's an artist on Cardano, but he has this interesting visual technology for his art where it can update live. I forget if it's from necessarily an outside source, has to be linked in, but a thought around voting would be you could sort of assign color codes to sentiment, right? And on whatever the app that you're using, the user can, let's say it's around, hey, what are your top 3 areas of improvement you'd like to see on the blockchain? That could be just a generic question that's on every app. It's very easy to implement. And, the user just said, well, I like this, whether it's, I don't know, governance, DeFi, whatever the case is. And that would visually be something I'm kind of speaking from a circle point of view, because I was in some discussions. People like say in the circle being able to see this visual and saying, okay, it looks like it's almost like looking at a heat map. Hey, this is what folks are concerned or thinking about right now. And that would sort of help to inform maybe a roadmap or maybe, I don't know, how to better disseminate proposals or something like that. Just
right on. Yeah. And to your first question, this is not currently, this is not a no code solution. I can say that with some certainty. This is not a no code solution. That's a great idea. This can be extended. It's open source. So could a no code solution be written on top of it? Very possible, right? Can't say for sure. That's possible. That's to your first point. To your second point, what I would say is if you look at the actual vote that we took on DripDropz, we actually went back and forth on this for several days beforehand. We were like, do we release the results beforehand? Do we hold them back? Sort of in traditional, like American politics, nobody knows anything until after the ballots are closed, right? This whole idea of not influencing the ballot was a thing. But then we realized this is on chain. And I was on the losing side of this argument, by the way. I was like, keep it closed. Don't tell anybody anything. But then Adam was like, but look, here's all you have to do. If you want to see the results, all you have to do is this, this, and this. So it's already public. Why would we just obscure it since it's already public? And so the team made the decision and we ran with it. This is what we decided to do. We published the results and we used color and we color coded things. And so you could see who was winning and everything. And it did. It worked out actually really, really well. And I'm glad to say I was wrong, because we actually did better than we expected we would do. We had over 20% of our drip in circulation that voted. It was fantastic, So right. So it was good. I was okay with being wrong, in that case. That was a good thing.
Are you guys familiar with
the discussion was part of the discussion was, if we don't make it public, then anyone who has the skills can and will make it public. And if a bad actor decides to make it public and misrepresent the vote, then we have issues. So what we did is we say, okay, how do we make it as Vulcan as possible and just say, here are the real-time results, as simple as possible, just the facts, right? And so we said, and we came to decide. I was like on the fence. Lloyd was on one side, Kyle's on another, and it was a tough debate. And you're probably gonna have to have that same debate among other groups. They're gonna say, we make it public? Do we try to obscure it? How do we deal with it? And it's a good question to ask, and we don't know if we found the answer. We don't know, but we know there's people will get better at this the more people that use it and work on the problem. Do you publicize real-time results?
Are you guys not to cut anybody off? Are you guys, just real quick, are you familiar with Wi-Fi? They have their own little governance that they did with the community there, and they had voting for I think emissions for holders was one of them, and the other one was like about an NFT or something. But it was cool as an experience. It was very cool for me, that was my first time participating in anything like that. But you could see where your vote was at any point and actually go back, and it was, I think, Lloyd, you mentioned different ways of capturing the vote. I think this would be like, depending on how much ADA or Wi-Fi you were holding, but it still counted one way or another. In any case, it was still very cool to have that transparency. As you mentioned, you guys were kind of wrestling with that, with how to go with it. But yeah, I think in the spirit of what this is all about with transparency, I think that seems like the right way to go.
Yeah, another good question is, should you allow people to change the vote before it ends, or should it be a one and done, and once they vote, it's permanent? And that's also undecided. But we went with the one and done, right?
We did. You're right.
version.
Exactly. We did the one and done version. It didn't eliminate the other version. It works, but we chose the one and done for our vote. And it was, this is great because these were the discussions our team had in depth over and over again, days and days at a time to come to these decisions. So, this is serious stuff, and it takes serious consideration, and it's not going to be a one size fits all thing, but the tool's flexible, which is one of the things we like about it. It's why we want to, empower the community with it, because it is a tool that is extensible and that people are going to be able to pick their methods. And we're hoping the more we foster these kinds of discussions that people will think about it, and then they'll go out and do their own votes on chain. We want to see everybody voting on chain, with native tokens, with ADA, with NFTs, whatever it is that you're voting with. It doesn't matter what you're voting with.
Since I haven't seen the application, I wonder if you get into this voting stage, is there somewhere you kind of find what you could vote on, or this is very specific on this is the QR code and this is how you get to vote on this specific topic, and it's not really a marketplace of voting solutions?
Right. Yeah. So this is a solution where you, as the owner of the maker of the ballot, you set the agenda. You put the agenda out as a blockchain NFT, and then in the same policy ID, you take these fungible tokens that actually count the votes, and that gives you your final result based on the ballot. So it's a combination of a ballot and votes upon that ballot. That's what the tool empowers. Everything else you do around that will be dependent on your community.
Okay, another thing, I was skimming through proposal and I got a bit stuck in a feasibility section, because it's at the first glance, it looks like a great proposal, but you don't really go into detail what you're actually going to propose as a feature set. Because you can say that, you evaluate code, you look at the code and you look at the comments, you go to feedback, but it doesn't really go into deep what are the feature sets. So it's nice to have this discussion, and hopefully you can add it to the comments also to the voters to read, and maybe some assessors could go through that, because I've been doing so many proposals last few days, so I feel like, I always have to dig through and in the assessments give the actual information what should be on proposal.
Yeah, it's such a balance to strike. From the team perspective, we were sitting there trying to decide just how much information and detail since we had put so much out in public, there's literally Medium articles and YouTube videos and there's tons of data on on what we want to do. How much of this would overwhelm the voters if we put too much in there? So what we hoped to do was just simply show, hey, this is the tool we used. We put the data out there for you to see that we used this tool and it was successful. And we're now giving you a combined tool that is that same tool, but actually in an open source reusable package. So that was what our goal was. That's why we felt feasibility was sort of the slam dunk for us, honestly, because, it's already done. It's really already built. The work that we have to do at this point is packaging and then maintaining. Right.
And Lloyd, I think what I can do is I'll take an item to list the features, so we can attach that as an addendum, because the idea was exactly how the vote worked is what's going to be delivered in a working product, but it does require skill to implement. It can't be implemented by just anybody. They're going to have web development skills to implement it. But we can sort something to that effect. If people want a feature set, we just got to be careful of scope creep.
Yeah.
So we have to define the scope, and we have to define the limitations. But working features as it was operating on DripDropz is what is the intention, the vote functionality, if that helps.
Oh, Latison joined. He could talk a little bit more architecturally.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, especially from the user perspective and what's going to be delivered.
Yeah,
So
Latison delivered the front end experience. So everything that you guys worked, if you guys participated in the vote, Latison was the team member that actually built that front end tooling for us to all use, including the page that had the voting results. He took the information that Adam's tool was presenting, and made those results that everybody could view.
And the key was to make it simple and unambiguous, so people clearly know what they're voting on. And with the vote itself, we had to use bounding parameters to things that make sense, right? Like the percentages, for example. What makes sense based on industry standards was somewhere between 6 and 10%. 200% doesn't make sense, therefore people shouldn't be voting on 200%. It would break the system, right? So we at least put parameters in the vote that made sense based on community and industry practices. So, and that was the subject of very long debate as well. So
sure was.
It certainly was.
Yeah,
not
ballot
easy.
construction. Ballot construction it takes time. It needs to be thoughtful.
For sure.
So
Hey,
that's
Laugh,
part.
you want to talk a little bit about the front end, if you don't mind? You want to tell everyone here a little bit about the front end
Of the voting part.
of the voting?
So we're talking about kind of like, and you can even talk to kind of like the architectural target for voting as a service, the open source component that we'd be enabling with the proposal that we get on Catalyst.
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed is when we did our initial voting implementation, a lot of token project that we dropped through DripDropz are actually saying, it'd be great to do this for ourselves because we want to enable some utility and consumption of our own token to actually do the same thing. And to do it in a way that we've done it right now, where we did a snapshot. And so all of the things that right now exist is a proprietary tech within the DripDropz platform. What we want to do is actually turn that into a solution. I think we dubbed it VAS, voting as a service, so that anybody can come on board and do it themselves. But in the event they want to run it on their own platform with their own token, there will be an open source version of it. So we want to build the whole stack out, so you should be able to run it everything by yourself. So it will enable you to set up the ballot, register it on chain, then set up the date when it can launch, and then start using Lightbulb integration to start voting, and then have the tallying up and all working as a full stack. So that's what we're trying to aim to. So take out what's currently proprietary built into DripDropz and pull it out into its own product that runs open source, but we'll run the managed version of it, so it's one of the same source code.
Yeah, thanks, Laffy. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Is there any other questions today about the voting or anybody else's experience with on-chain voting that they'd like to bring up? We're here today for this enabling on-chain voting discussion.
I think
I have a question, but it's a little technical. Sorry.
I hear someone, but it's very quiet, whoever that was. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, whoever that was, I was not able to catch what they said. It looks like it's Dorian, and yeah, it's very. There we go.
That's better.
Yeah, we're hearing you now, Dorian. Go ahead and give it a try again.
Sorry, can you hear me now, or is it still pretty rough?
Yeah. No, we got you. Go right ahead, Dorian.
Okay, so I apologize. It's a little bit of a technical question, but I'm curious because of and this might require like the knowledge of addresses, but with the stake keys, I guess what I'm interested in is like voting privileges. But if you are currently staked to a stake pool, if you guys have any experiences on that or any topics on that.
Sure. Actually, you could be staked to a stake pool. And actually, in our case, we actually went, now it depended for our snapshot, but we actually went so far as to look on dexes and figure out who had drip on dexes to allow them to vote without pulling their drip out of the dex. So yeah, is that possible? 100%. Do you have to do the work? Yeah. So yeah, it's technical. It requires the work. Our team was able to pull that together. And so, yeah, it's definitely possible.
It's not recommended. I can tell you that now.
Right. Yeah. No, it's like lots of caveats there, but yeah, we did it, but wow.
The way the DEXs implemented it is that you give up your native asset to them, whatever the fungible token is, and they give you something called an LP token, so liquidity provider token in exchange for it. So we had to know what the LP pairs were for each of the assets. It was easy because we were in control of our own token, so we can talk to them directly and say, hey, what's our LP token policy ID and the asset name for Drip on your platform, and then go after them. It made it, there was only one case where we couldn't do this. I think that was the yield farming, wasn't it?
It was Wing Rider's yield farm, because they then had to take the liquidity pool tokens and put them into there. So that added a whole layer of complexity on top of things that we just couldn't account for this time.
Exactly, without some complex DB-Sing wizardry, which we didn't want to go into. So we only went as far as assets that are in your wallet, that are being staked, that are, we worked off the
liquidity pool.
Liquidity pool, yeah. We worked off the Go snapshot. So yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So that so I guess that's with the reward system, but I guess with voting, you guys did not go with using like grabbing stake addresses and verifying through that by any means, or was there any?
Well, no, we voted based on the amount of drip held in the wallet.
There's there's two ways to do it. So we can do it like the ADA style. You know, your vote power is how much ADA you have. And the other option is, obviously, you can point that to a different asset rather than an ADA. Another approach we're thinking of offering is as well, actually redeem those tokens. Therefore, you have to give up your tokens in order to have that vote power. So if you feel strongly about an option you're going to vote, and let's say it costs 1 million drip token or something, you would actually have to send in those 1 million drip token. So there's two ways to do this, and we're entertaining both.
Well, no, he's got a good feature request. So like we have to look and see if there are use cases for voting based on stake pool. You know, I don't know if that's a huge market. You know what I'm saying? It's an interesting thing to do, but I can see where. I mean, maybe I can see some use cases for it. So if it's not more than like a 30-minute, extra query in the integration, we can definitely look at that.
Do you mean like your vote power is equal to the amount of your stake at a certain stake pool?
Well, that
I do not. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, well, my idea is kind of using like a treasury or the wallet that's taking the fees in from staking from the rewards, and allowing the stakers to decide where the fees go, in a sense. So kind of like there'd be a small or an amount that could be measured, and then it could be distributed to whatever, like deciding by the stake pool stakers, so to speak. And it would just only require their address to verify them as voters.
Yeah, it does sound like you're getting kind of into that the sort of the DAO idea of things, and it could be implemented in a system like that should someone be interested. Like with the Cardano treasury, that's it's got its own rules and things are going for it, but should if someone had their own treasury for a token or for a DAO or for whatever, and they were collecting whatever they were collecting, ADA or some other token, then yes, that you could feasibly use this system to vote for how and where those fees are spent. That would absolutely be possible.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Any other questions? Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, no, I was going to say it's and if it's something that the community wants to expand or wants us to keep working on too, we can look at it, and we will have to do this ourselves. It's voting as a service. We want to handhold, tier 1 clients that really need, to ensure they execute a flawless vote for their communities. And as we do that and engage that, they're going to have more expansive requirements, and so we'll get past MVP and just the same thing we've done with DripDropz. We'll just keep building and doing what we need to do to compete. And then as we do that, and we'll do that naturally just to enable the clients, right? And then we can turn around and just open that up to you guys, and that's no problem.
See, one of the benefit of open sourcing the voting on chain, the core of the application, so is that a community member could be looking at it and seeing a unique use case and say, hey, here's a snapshot plugin that builds a snapshot based on this condition you just described right now. Or here's a way to build the voting options in a way it's ranked choice, and that's a new feature. So technically, opening it up, it's going to enable more features that people want. You don't need to ask for it. You can just go build it and then publish it. And as DripDropz core team, anything that we add to this SaaS product, we think it's valuable in the community. We can make that available as a pull request to the open source version as well. So you could,
yeah,
absolutely.
And we have to be mindful of scope. That's very important. Every project that builds a project has to be mindful of the scope. For example, does DripDropz have the technology to snapshot what is at an address or who is staked to a pool? Yes, each of those technologies took months to build, but they are not part of the voting technology. The voting technology is based on what asset is located at an address, and that's how that vote occurs. We have other technologies unrelated to voting, so just be clear. So we'll get some scope statements in there to make sure we clearly define the scope of what's being delivered.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Rick's always keeping us in between the navigational beacons over here.
And I do believe there's going to be some enhancements in what we deploy too.
Yeah, for sure.
With
hey,
no
Quiz, are
commitment
you?
yet.
Yeah, Rick, you keeping us in
Oh
line.
no, not
No
necessarily.
commitment.
Not necessarily feature, just operational.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And Quasar, you have another question, man?
I think you're muted there.
You're muted, bud.
I just remind Kyle once in a while he's a
Thank you, guys. I've got a couple of devices muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's just say that you don't get funded on this. Are you still going to open source it for us?
It's a matter of priorities.
Exactly.
It's timing and priorities.
Yeah, because it's going to take time and effort to build the documentation and verify the code. There's going to be other things that will need to be done. But yeah, sorry, Kyle. It's priorities. It's going to take time and effort to move it in that direction.
Yeah, you said it exactly right. It's time and effort, because the feature right now exists as is within the whole DripDropz platform. So I couldn't just take it and release it. You know, it runs on a different set of infrastructure. We have CI/CD pipeline, and it's built purposely for our current infrastructure. The open source version most likely going to be a Docker-based solution, so that you can spin it up. Everything you need for it to run runs with it. For example, maybe I use Cardano Node CLI, or maybe we do an integration with Block Trust or something, and it would be completely different from how we run it. So it would almost be a rewrite, and it would have to be written in a way that community can contribute to it, and it is properly structured as well. Right. So things can be added to it that we can then incorporate into the SaaS solution, or maybe the vice versa, we can add stuff into it. So if it doesn't get funded, it will, it gets deprioritized to actually go create that, because there's no reason for us to do that, because we can keep promoting our SaaS solution and say, hey, you need a vote for your governance next vote on your project. What color should your banner be, or should we change the logo? Like all of these kind of votes would be enabled, and then the project owners can decide with this, hey, we want to spend the token, actually have some consumption. Actually, no, we want to do snapshot based on, so your voting power is based on how much you hold of their token. So the possibilities will keep adding, and it depends on whether the people at large would want that publicly or not.
Right. And so this is the bottom line for the DripDropz team, I think, is that we see this as a valid and strong use for Catalyst funds. We're taking an innovation that we've created and giving it to the community, and we're only asking the community to pay for the work it takes to take it from a closed source built-in package to something that the community will be able to take and use and make it its own. So to us, we feel like that's a valid truly valid use of the Catalyst funds. And so we were very comfortable asking for funds for that purpose. A good question.
Lloyd, I appreciate
In case I
you,
answer your question
sorry.
about priorities, I mean, we're a small team and we're very nimble, and it's a bear market, and we have to focus, you know, our efforts on what's gonna, you know, be the most strategic moves for us, you know, so we can ensure that we survive. You know, as we grow and we expand our development staff, which we do have other proposals and things like that, which would help us do if we're able to do that, then open sourcing more stuff becomes more reasonable as we're able to grow and come out of this. But you know, right now we're kind of in a mode where you know, where we spend our time has to make sense.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I mean, I would love for, you know, you know, to be able to execute on that. And I think that's really what these guys.
I think we lost him again.
He froze.
Kyle always,
Perfect.
Kyle just, he gets us right to that moment where he's going to tell us, and then he goes away.
If you want to know the secret, just look right.
No.
That must be an absolute pain in team meetings. Just Kyle. So Kyle's gone.
Kyle's gone.
Yeah, he has to sometimes.
So
drop
the
off
remainder of the
hill.
question, was it answered? Was the question answered, or is there anything I can help with?
No, I think it was answered for me.
Okay.
You know,
Cool. Yeah.
open source innovation, this community is fucking brilliant. And what do all of us need to be able to get a project up to a level of open source? And, you know, like that's a hard thing for all of us to do. And that'd be fun to pursue together.
Yeah, you're right.
And the project has to look at, do they have the revenue stream that they can retain the developers that they are required, that they can open source software and not harm their bottom line and end up not being able to pay their employees and pay the bills. I mean, that's something that I think, you know, every Project Catalyst project should or would be looking at. And also, you know, if you launch something on Catalyst, you got to be looking at, you know, how do I monetize that in the future, right? Or is it going to be permanently dependent on Catalyst, or is it eventually going to be people are going to pay me for the service or the software so that it can sustain operations and sustain the business model?
Yeah, and I know that Catalyst has their different philosophies around how to use Catalyst, and that, you know, that's for sure. And we could keep debating it over time, but you know, I know from my perspective, the philosophy that I use is I want Catalyst to make products that then stand on their own. Like, I don't necessarily, you know, want to have something that the only way that it exists is that it gets funds voted from the treasury every challenge setting. That to me doesn't feel like, you know, a successful innovation. So again, that's my you know, perspective. I know there could be others, but that's my perspective on that point.
I agree.
There's tools. We need tools. Sometimes we need tools to be able to build that type of stuff though too. But like, for as far as like business models, yeah, business models should get to revenue. I think I agree with you there.
Yeah. And yeah, I can see, like you're saying, certain tooling that could just be continuously being updated through it. If it's really helping everybody, then yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I just think a lot of proposals, the model should be, hey, this is going to get me to revenue, and then I'll exist on my own, and we'll have this tool that's actually giving back to Catalyst, hopefully, right? You know, because with those transaction fees going back into Catalyst to fund more innovation, that's the whole idea.
For me, it would be the way I see a good way to use Catalyst funding is to bring new and novel ideas that didn't exist before, because you're not going to bring new users into the ecosystem by duplicating somebody else's doing for free or cheap.
Right on. Yeah.
And I saw an opportunity along with Adam Dean saying that, hey, like, we did this and the general populace used it. We actually utilized it for our own product. I can see how this can be useful to others. And nothing like this was proposed. And that was the reasoning. Yeah.
Yep. And here we are.
Do you guys say you have to have a level of technical expertise to your level to be able to do this as a business?
to do it as
Oh,
a
like,
business?
You know, for someone.
We
to take
already
it on.
are. We already are.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
already doing it.
Are
Yeah.
you Roki, are you
We
asking
gotta-
like, does it take our level of expertise to run the voting tool? Is that what
Correct.
you're asking?
Correct.
Okay. No. So that's the idea, is that this will be something that'll be, as Lathis was saying earlier, a Docker object. So you'll have to have some solid, basic program architecture type understanding. You may have to understand how to use it like AWS or maybe Google Cloud or one of those cloud services, and Docker.
You'll need a
right?
system admin or something like that who understands how to maybe shell in and spin up a node.
You'd have to put in the policy IDs for whatever asset you're using as the vote weight.
But no, you're getting a lot of what this team's expertise is distilled into something that you can replicate and use on your own if you have some moderate administrative skills.
But yeah, if you wanted to run a business for yourself, what you would do is, you would partner up with a sysadmin guy, a guy who does DevOps or whatever, who can basically get the infrastructure set up for a vote for you. And then you go out and you could sell it, and you can say, hey man, I'll host your vote for you. And you could use the open source and create a business and build on top of that. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing. We're going to be hosting votes for clients that really want it to go right, and you can compete with us. And that's what it's all about. Let's go. And there's going to be massive competition. Voting as a service. People need it, but being able to do it right. I don't know. I mean, I guess right is all. It depends. There's going to be competitive flavors. What is right?
Yeah, I was going to add to this quickly. It's not going to be so easy, that anybody could do it. Some basic understanding will be required, but we'll make it easy as possible. And one of the avenues I was exploring is basically packaging it up as a cloud deployable app. So for a developer, he will be able to run the Docker stack locally, but imagine being hooked up to something like DigitalOcean or Heroku so that we can actually include a one-click deployment. So even if you don't know what you're doing, and say, we can give you the very basic instruction and say, look, go create an account in Heroku, do this to log in on the CLI, now click this button, now your voting stack is deployed on Heroku. And you go to your IP address, your GUI is up. That's what I'm seeing as making it accessible to everyday Joe. But in terms of building something like this, I want to remind everybody where this is all started. Just quickly, Adam Dean worked on the first iteration of this. It's called Spokra. It was a long time ago, and version 2 iteration of that is what ran on DripDropz for our community governance vote. And the new version that we're working on is an improvement on that third iteration. So it's going to be a third iteration on that. So we're all coming from a team of people who had sort of, what was the word I'm looking for?
Experience doing it.
Yeah. So we're bringing the experience from actually creating something like that never existed before on the Cardano blockchain, and turning it, refining it, and then refining it again for the final public version.
Yeah, and I think in addition to the last question, that documentation is one of the deliverables. Now, the documentation will also have a scope. For example, the prerequisite might be you need to already know how to bring up a cloud server. We're not going to tell you how to do that. You might have to be able to install the prerequisite software. And then once you have the server and the prerequisites, from that point, we describe here's how you would actually implement the voting app, whether it's a Docker container.
That's some painful shit.
Yeah, but so we do have to define that scope as into how what is the documentation going to cover.
Yeah, so the public version.
Oh no, Kezar, if that's too painful for you, I will provide you an easy service where you can enable a vote.
That's right.
So you got to pay money. All right, that's.
Exactly.
That's our business
consultation service.
Yeah, hold up. I was talking about on the Twitter space. I don't have a cushion on my speaker because I'm streaming it there, and it went scratched across it, and I said that's painful shit. Not what you guys were saying at all. So great timing, but
perfect timing, man.
Delivery, great timing, but no, it wasn't towards you guys.
So one of the thing about the open source version, it most likely will be built with the public offering, like, for example, hook up your BlockFrost account and then it runs in a Docker instance, or whether it's deployed to something like Heroku or DigitalOcean, end of the day, it's still a bare metal server running a single instance. It's not designed for scale and things like that. What we as DripDropz then plan to do is take that same version and create a proper backend for it that, if, for example, our transaction would be powered by Firehose. I'm not sure if many people know what that is. I can go into it later. So it wouldn't use BlockFrost. So our scaling solution is that it would be deployed on AWS in a scalable manner so that if 1 million people came to vote, all 1 million requests will be served, and things like that. So, and if somebody wants to then compete with that, then that's the opportunity they have. So have the source code as it exists, and then take it to run it how they think they can compete with our scale.
Right on. And Jeremy asked in the chat, I'll just say it here for the recording as well, for the benefit of everybody else. He asked if the documentation itself will be part of the open source package, and the answer is yes. You know, the documentation will be in the package, and yes, it will be editable just like all the rest of the code. So, you know, we'll be maintaining that branch for the first year. After that, it'll depend on, whether we're maintaining it or someone else is maintaining it. But for at least that first year, we will be maintaining that branch, and we would take commits, and we'd have to, accept the commits from our end. But yeah, and after that, it really will depend on the community and what the community wants it to do. So a few other people joined. I don't know if anybody.
And in addition to what Lloyd just said, I think we're putting about a 6-month caveat on that to say bug fixes up to 6 months out and a certain amount of time once it's deployed. If it's approved and it's open sourced, it'll be supported for a certain period of time. We need to define that. It's not, and of course that will also be open to community inputs, feedbacks, pull requests, providing new features to the code. All that will also be eligible. It won't be exclusive, but there will be a support period as well.
Right. And the hope is that the community embraces it during that time and adds to this code base. Like, they find, like I think Lathisan said earlier, they find this thing that they want to add to it, and they don't just add it for themselves, but they take it and they give that back to the community so that the whole tool grows because we're supporting it as a community.
And we plan to do the same thing. One
Absolutely.
idea that was floated around was the notion of a voter registration. So doing the snapshot based on where the native asset is held, there's one of the attack vectors somebody mentioned in the team was Franken address. So one way you can avoid that is through a voter registration. So at the time you register to get your voter registration token is tied to your state key, so that you expend that in order to cast the vote. And if that turns out to be a cool and security feature that adds value to the voting on governance on chain, then we would add that back in,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fantastic. I remember that conversation, and that's a cool one. That's one of those areas where it's extremely cool that if we could get it to where we can prove they are who they are, so we know that they're the ones that committed to that ballot question. That's just another fantastic level of security on the system. So welcome to all the new people who joined us recently. Today we are we're talking about enabling on-chain voting. And we're talking about the DripDropz proposal to open source our on-chain voting application from our successful vote that happened in May of this year. If you guys have any questions, this is an open forum. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to just pop up and start asking your questions, and we'll be happy to answer them. We've got several members of the DripDropz team here. Lathisan handles our full stack development. Kyle's our CEO, and Rick McCracken is here as well, and he does our risk assessment. So he's keeping us in between the navigational beacons here today. So any questions you guys might have, feel free to ask them now. Jump in.
I have a quick naive question. Can you issue NFTs as many, how you might issue like, I don't know, millions of coins. Can you issue as many NFTs, or is that technically intensive?
As soon as you make 2, it's an FT.
Yeah.
So no longer non-fungible. It becomes you got 2 of them, so it's not world unique. It's no longer an NFT. An FT An FT is a fungible token. It's like cash. It's like a
Yeah,
dollar.
yeah,
If I owe you $100, you don't care which $100 bill I give you.
right.
They're all
No,
the
I'm
same.
totally, yeah, I totally get that part. Yeah.
So-
Do you mean in relation to voting?
So it's this might turn into like anyway, but like it's kind of a long thought I had about if you were issuing tokens over a period, let's say 2 years, and then you realize, hey, we want to acknowledge a certain you know, level of commitment of, you know, people who are in since, you know, day X. Is it possible to I know I'm not sure. Naive question.
I
Again,
think
Yeah, I understand. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Lathy. I know what your question is. Go ahead. We get this from clients.
Yeah. So
Right, yeah.
this is going back to snapshots. So a snapshot determines what is the power of your vote that you have. You're about to cast on a certain ballot, right? Right now, we did ours with our DRIP token, which is fungible token, but there's no reason why it had to be done with an FT token. It could have been done with an NFT as well. So if we take a Go snapshot, and then in there we see which wallet held which NFT, and then you give us the rarity and say, well, NFT with this name is voting power 1 million versus NFT with this name or number is a vote power, I don't know, 100, then that could be doable. At the end of the day, it ends up being a snapshot based on a non-fungible token versus a fungible token.
Okay, thank you. And then my follow up on that with that explanation is, okay, with that understanding, is there a technical limitation to issuing millions of NFTs as you would tokens, or is that, you know?
There's a financial limitation to issuing lots of
It's a
NFTs.
technical one too. It's heavy. You got to get them on. That's a lot of NFTs.
All you have to do is look at any of the drops that happens on, you know, early days during our bull run, you know, every time.
Oh yeah, I was part of one or two of them.
Yeah, so we brought down the chain every
But
time.
no, you guys were like champs, man. When you guys came in with that technology, I mean, you know, you killed it the way that you came with the, you know, with your technique there using the UTXO.
Yeah, and to follow up with Lethizen's answer,
Yeah.
in addition to what he said, the NFT technology is over on the fire hose back end side. It is not on the voting side. As far as I know, it's the FT technology by address, regardless of whether it's staked. As long as it's FT by address, I'm going to have to check to see if the NFT related is there, but I don't believe it is.
Yeah, so
It's just snapshot, right? Lithies, it's actually whatever you put in a snapshot is what the voting power is related to.
let me clarify. Yeah. So the open source solution, part of the vote setup is that you would have to provide a list and say, this is the snapshot based on your conditions, where you could have utilized the fact that somebody held a wallet, or they were the earlier registration, or they did 100 different activities in your system, therefore they have earned that. So you provide that snapshot CSV and say, hey, here's all the voters we're expecting, these are their relative powers. So that needs to be known in advance before the ballot starts for people coming and voting. Now, here's where VAS makes sense, like the voting as a service, which is the commercial product, is that we can extend those capabilities for snapshotting easily to our customers and say, hey, we can take that snapshot for you. So you wouldn't have to do the work. And that would be one of our competitive edge versus the open source version.
Well, no, and we could even offer it maybe a la carte last. So if they wanted to come in and they're using the open source version and just wanted to pay for the snapshot, you know, we could do that too.
Exactly. We can give just the snapshot on its own, so you run it on your open source version. And if it turns out to be a key feature people want and say, hey, we want to be able to take all these kind of crazy snapshot, maybe we'll add that as a plugin or a feature.
Right on. All right, guys. Well, I think with that, if there are no further questions, I think I'm going to go ahead and bring this this space to a close. Rocking on.
Lloyd, thanks for facilitating this. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you all so much for participating today. Thank you all from the DripDropz team for your participation and all the great questions today and all the great feedback that you guys provided us. It's going to help make our team stronger, and we appreciate everything you guys do for us. So thank you very much, and we hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.
Keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you.
Go do some proposal assessments, make some money, finish it up here. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.